All right, good evening and welcome. I'm Pearl Ann Zlarney. I'm a board member of the League and editor of The Voter, our monthly newsletter. My pronouns are she and her. And we're so pleased that you're all able to attend this briefing. And the word briefing is legalese for an informational meeting. For our guests, the League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that's worked since the 1930s in Denver, and of course 1920 nationally once women got the vote, to improve our systems of government and impact public policies through voter education and advocacy. Our briefings throughout the League year, such as this one, serve to educate our members and voters and often lead to advocacy, as this one surely could. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. You probably saw the notice come across that we're recording, and Andrea will have that on the website not too long after this briefing. Please use chat to ask any questions during the briefing. We'll be collecting them there and then presenting them to the speakers at the end. We've also all found that the chat area turns out to be a good place for sharing information with each other. After last time, I think we should put a thing that let's be kind to each other in chat, but it's definitely a place where we can have conversations as well. As Andrea said, we have muted everyone to make sure we can all hear our speakers clearly. And I think without further messing around, I'll hand it over to Sue Stark to introduce our speakers. And I'll see you again at the end with questions.
You're muted, Sue.
I'm Susan Stark. I'm the co-director of program for League of Women Voters of Denver. I'd like to start this evening by acknowledging first that this is Women's History Month. And of course, women having autonomy over their bodies has a very long history. I want to just remind you that it was in 1960 when the first oral contraceptives were invented and approved by the FDA. Scientists then had to work around laws that prohibited contraceptive research. History repeats itself. Sounds interesting, right? This was a huge step for women. This was the first time they really could be in control of their reproductive cycle. The other piece of history that I really want to add is to remember and acknowledge Pat Schroeder, who we lost, who died earlier this week. She represented Colorado in Congress for 12 sessions. She was a trailblazer for women's rights, gender equality, and family rights. And apropos of tonight's topic about reproductive rights and abortion access, the very first time I was ever called a baby killer was when I was leaving my car to go into a fundraiser for Pat Schroeder, and anti-abortion activists lined the street in this little neighborhood where I was going into a house and yelled baby killer at me because I was going into a Pat Schroeder fundraiser. So that's a little bit of history. We are so delighted to have so many speakers tonight representing various agencies who are in coalition together to support reproductive rights, reproductive health access, and abortion access. We're going to begin tonight with Claudia Perez. She is the public affairs manager at Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, and she'll represent the provider in this sense here in Colorado. And then I think if Karen Middleton joins us, it will go to Karen, who is the president of Cobalt, a Colorado-based organization that advances abortion access and reproductive rights. It was formerly NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado. And it also runs an abortion fund and facilitates a 12-state regional abortion alliance. Next, we have two people that I don't know personally that I'm getting to know tonight. Ariana Morales, who is the policy manager with New Era Colorado, and has been with that organization for 4 years, leading their abortion advocacy campaign on college campuses, which is called the Brazen Project. It works at destigmatizing abortion among younger people. And in her current role, she supports all legislative efforts, policy research, and issue campaigns. In addition, we have Mar Galvez, who is with Color, and she's their policy associate. She's been working with them for 5 years on policy work, but also on community organizing, community-based research, and youth leadership and development programs. We're also honored to have with us tonight Shara Smith, who is the executive director of the Interfaith Alliance. She brings over 10 years of nonprofit management experiences to Interfaith, and she began her career in academia, but then began her own consultancy aimed at helping social justice-oriented nonprofits enhance their operations, programmatic work, communications, and fundraising. And our final speaker is one of our League of Women Voters sisters. Sharon Davis is board vice president of the League of Women Voters of Colorado, and she also heads up the Reproductive Justice Task Force, which is part of League of Women Voters of Colorado. She's worked for a number of volunteer organizations, including Access Reproductive Justice. One of the wonderful things I learned about her is that she was a member of the Irish Civil Society delegation and was a co-convener for Ireland's abortion rights campaign. And she'll talk to us about the kinds of things that League of Women Voters of Colorado is doing to help people access abortion services and reproductive health care. So we would start, please, with Claudia Perez from Planned Parenthood of Colorado.
Hi, again, Claudia Perez, Public Affairs Manager with Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains. I use she, her pronouns. And thank you, Susan and LWVD, for having us here tonight to talk about what the landscape looks like in our state and the package of bills that we're introducing this session. I'll go ahead and just give an overview of how the DOPS decision in June of last year has impacted our patient community and Coloradans at large. We really have been seeing the greatest impact being in patient influx to our health centers across the region. With Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, we are a 4-state affiliate representing Colorado, New Mexico, Southern Nevada, and Wyoming. And with that, we anticipated, hoping for the best, but also preparing for the worst in seeing that Roe was overturned, that patients would be traveling from out of states where they have lost access to our health centers to receive care. And we've definitely started seeing that even before the DOPS decision last year with SB 8 in Texas, with a lot of out-of-state Texan patients coming to our health centers to receive abortion care that they can no longer receive. Some of the numbers that we have that I think are relevant to this conversation. So in 2021, we scheduled a total of 1,500 out-of-state patients that entire year. At the end of 2022, following the DOPS decision, we were scheduling 300 out-of-state patients every week. And that trend has continued to be the standing pattern as we see it today. And post-Roe in our region, 1 out of every 3 patients that we serve at our health centers are traveling from states beyond the region. And the majority of those patients are coming from Texas. What this looks like in wait times, it really depends on where you are in the state. But generally speaking, we've seen wait times go from 3 days up to 35 days. And this impacts appointments for non-abortion related visits as well. That's part of the ripple effect that we're seeing impacting patient communities across the state. And we know that, especially when it comes to abortion care, these are time-sensitive meetings and visits. And so this is part of the access barriers that we continue to face. And when we look at legal versus accessible, one of the key components is making sure that people can get the care that they need when they need it. And I know that some other items to perhaps chat about in this moment, right, are also the pending legal litigation, right, that is still at play in this ever evolving landscape as we navigate a really unknown territory, both in, state legislatures and in the courts. So I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with the Miffy decision, but there is a case right now against the FDA brought forth in Texas that, should it go in a certain way, would ban mifepristone across the country, and that would impact states where abortion is legal, including Colorado. And this is part of, generally speaking, a strategic, coordinated effort by a very biased anti-abortion group that is, again, seeking to limit care to our patients across the country. And for those of you who don't know, mifepristone is the first medication in a two-step medication abortion process. So we have mifepristone and misoprostol. That is the two-step medication. And if mifepristone were to be banned, we would not lose access to medication abortion in Colorado. Medication abortion would remain safe and accessible. And this is because our health centers are ready to implement misoprostol only medication abortion regimens to our patient. Misoprostol only regimens are safe. They are effective. Medication abortion at large is the most common form of abortion worldwide, and misoprostol only medication abortion regimens are also the most common form of medication abortions that we see at large. And so our health centers will not miss a step. We will keep our doors open. People will continue to be able to access medication abortion if they so choose. And yet we know that this is devastating and frustrating. And again, is a coordinated attempt to continue to restrict access to abortion care post-Roe in the country at large. And I'll also just pause to see if folks have any questions that I can answer at this time. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you, so please feel free to put things in the chat and I can moderate that once I am done chatting, or I'm not sure if anyone can jump in to help guide those as well.
Yes, I definitely can. We have one question here. Clearly, other states' laws are not representing their constituents' needs. Are there any federal laws being considered to give compensation to other states from the patient's state of origin for their health care? So if a patient comes from Texas, is there any way to get that care covered, I think, under a federal law?
I'll also have my coalition colleagues jump in if they have answers to these questions as a group, but if not, I'm happy to follow up afterwards with more information, but I think Ariana has some guidance here.
Hi, everyone. Also, sorry, I'm sitting on the ground at the Capitol because our package is on second readings today. So that's why this is the background you see. I don't know of any specific federal policies that are introduced or attempting to get passed that would do that. However, I do know that there are some amazing funds, abortion funds in different states that have access to abortion, including here in Colorado, that are helping a lot of those people who are coming from out of state pay for those abortions, and also some of the transportation, food costs, housing costs. So there's a lot of great work being done by advocates in those states, including our very own Cobalt Abortion Fund. I know that they've seen a ton of patients, and a lot of the people they've been seeing have been out of state folks. But yeah, I'm not sure about the federal policy specifically.
Ariana, there's a law that was just passed in Wyoming as well, which outlaws medical abortions.
And I think we'll maybe talk about the part of the package, one of the bills in the package would be protecting people who are coming out of state to Colorado seeking an abortion. So they would also be covered by any type of criminal offenses from the state that they live in. So that's also part of the work that I know states who do have access to abortion still are doing here in our country.
There was another question about the two-step meds, and whether that the single med is less effective and has more side effects. Is that?
So that's definitely something that, like a narrative that is out there. And what we want to be really careful of is not to stigmatize misoprostol only medication abortion regimens. Again, they are the most common form of medication abortions used worldwide. They are safe, they are effective, they will be the best medication form of abortion option for people, depending on whatever the outcome may be. If we do see mifepristone banned, we know that the majority of patients who use the medication abortion option are doing so within the first 1 to 12 weeks. And that efficacy rate for differing from a misoprostol only to a mifepristone misoprostol regimen is still within high efficacy rate within those 1 to 10 to 11 weeks.
So maybe we do the rest of the questions later. Yeah.
Sure,
Do
I think
things
that's a good
so.
idea. Ariana and Mar, would you like to begin talking about the legislative proposals that you are sitting on the floor of the legislature of that building advocating for?
Yeah, absolutely. I can go ahead and introduce myself and who New Era is, and then I'll pass it over to Mar.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Ariana. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the policy manager at New Era. You've actually done all of this introduction, so I won't go into it, but yeah, New Era Colorado is an organization that works to empower young people to just take action on the issues that they care about, whether that is reproductive rights, and we know a big portion of young people support reproductive rights. Economic justice is a big issue for young people. Student debt and higher education is another issue that we've worked on for the last couple of years here at the legislature. So part of it is giving them resources they need to make sure that they are empowered to take action on those issues, but also making sure that they have the information they need to also take action at the ballot box, which includes registering them to vote and then also giving them resources to help them know what is on the actual ballot. So that's a lot of the work we do, and some of that includes leadership development with young people, turning them from advocates to activists. So I'll pass it over to Mar now to talk about Cobalt.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Mar. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the policy associate for Color. We're the only Latina-led reproductive justice organization in Colorado. Reproductive justice just quickly being the 4-tenet wing of the reproductive politics coalition, as I like to think of it, with the right to have children, the right not to have children, the right to parent children in safe, healthy, and sustainable communities, and the right to personal bodily autonomy. And we do everything from community-based organizing and very grassroots educational programs to the policy work that we're doing today and most days. I think I'd also, Ariana and I can talk about Senate Bill 190, but I did want to introduce that this is part of a 3-bill package called the Safe Access to Protected Healthcare Package, led by New Era, Color, Planned Parenthood, and Cobalt. And I'm sure we've heard about this, but I just wanted to say that this is one of the 3 packages in the bill. And the quick overview is one of the bills aims to protect patients and providers that are offering gender affirming care and abortion care in the state of Colorado from criminal or civil prosecution in more hostile states. Our bill protects people from, sorry, give me just one second. The deceptive advertising practices of anti-abortion clinics, also known as crisis pregnancy centers or fake clinics, as well as stopping the deceptive and experimental practice of the abortion pill reversal. And then the last bill increases insurance protections, insurance coverage, for reproductive health care services. I do believe that I have a few slides for our part of the presentation. I can pull them up, or I don't know if I've also shared them with someone
Andrea,
here.
do you have those? Which for the 190?
190, yes.
Yeah, I think Andrea has those and she can put them on.
Perfect. All right. And we can go ahead to the first slide. All right. So what is an anti-abortion center? So anti-abortion centers, also known, like I said, as crisis pregnancy centers or fake clinics, are the on-the-ground presence of the national anti-abortion movement. They're very well funded, very well resourced, and they use deceptive advertising to lure people in and steer them away from the medical care that they seek. They're often faith-based organizations that pose as a medical authority to get folks that think that they're accessing medical-based care into their clinics in order to either delay or sway them from the decision that they have decided to make. They also, and this is just a quick overview before we dive deeper into it, they also offer a medication abortion reversal pill, not pill, a medication. Oh my goodness, it's been a long day. I've been here since 8. But it essentially, so medication abortion is a 2-step process, and we have touched on meso only options also being effective, but the most common practice now is a 2-step process. The first being mifepristone, which stops the intake of progesterone. And then like 24 to 48 hours later, you take misoprostol to cause uterine contractions. And the point of this 2-step process is to stop a pregnancy. And what they advertise that the abortion pill reversal does is reverse the first step, meaning the mifepristone. And there's no evidence that says that this is true. It's an experimental practice, and it has been looked down upon from many, like the American Medical Association and the American Gynecologist College Association. A study done in 2021 found that 85% of participants could not correctly identify whether a website belonged to an anti-abortion center or a real abortion clinic, because they really try to make themselves look like a real abortion clinic. The quote at the top was done in Connecticut. It was like an undercover investigation where people went in and tried to see what the way that they framed their work within their work. And they said that the best client you can ever get is one that thinks that they're walking into a real abortion clinic. And I want to hand it to Ariana to talk about the work that we and our organizations have done regarding these centers. It's still the first slide, sorry.
Yeah. So New Era, we talked about this in my introduction, but New Era has a college advocacy initiative called the Brazen Project, which at the time, when I started.
We've lost you, Ariana.
Which was 2019, it was a fellowship program where young people could fellowship, learn how to talk about, oh, am I back now? Okay, great.
You're back.
Oh, there's the internet connection is unstable message I did not get earlier. I was saying that the Brazen Project used to be a fellowship program where young people could come, learn how to be abortion advocates, and would talk to their peers about abortion on college campuses. We worked primarily at CSU Fort Collins, CU Boulder, and the Auraria campus here in Denver. During that work, which a lot of it consisted of some of those peer-to-peer conversations at tables on college campuses, we found that there were a lot of young people who didn't understand or would go to these centers not realizing that they were an anti-abortion center. They often thought they were connected to the health center on campus or that they were an abortion provider. And so throughout some more conversations that we had in our own research, seeing that this was an issue that was happening across the country, we realized it was really important for us to start educating young people about these centers. And throughout that process, we heard more stories of people going to these centers, getting their care delayed, and then often receiving really stigmatizing messaging that didn't align with their values or religious ideology. And so in 2021, we worked with student government at all 3 of those campuses to pass resolutions that basically condemn the actions of these centers for the reasons of it was unsafe for young people to be going to these centers, thinking that they were providing unbiased medical care when that wasn't the case. So that is a lot of the work that we've done, and we know that this is an issue that particularly affects young people because they target their advertising on campuses. They're located on college campuses. Some of them have student groups on college campuses. That was the case in 2019. Also in 2019, there was a van that would come to the Auraria campus that would offer ultrasounds and pregnancy tests that was connected to one of these centers. So we realized pretty quickly that this was an issue that was affecting our base, and our base was very adamant that something needed to happen about this, which is why we're so excited to be partnering with Cobalt to have some state legislation around this, not just having student government trying to pass some safety concerns at their campuses. So I'll pass it to Mark because I know Cobalt has also done work around this.
Yeah, so part of that same study that found that 85% of participants could not correctly identify even one anti-abortion center, in contrast with a real abortion clinic, found that out of those 85, non-Spanish speakers were 40% more likely to not be able to correctly identify these centers. And we know that they also deliberately target these communities that are non-English speaking and immigrant communities, because they'll go into those neighborhoods and place like billboard ads or just have more propaganda to lure people to these places rather than real abortion clinics, knowing that they don't have as much access to adequate healthcare in general. And so in 2018, Calor did a billboard ad campaign to put giant ads in these communities saying that there is a fake clinic in their neighborhood and guide them to new resources, knowing that they needed it. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. So currently there are 51 anti-abortion clinics in Colorado and 20 real clinics. And I think one big thing that someone in a panel that we just did this weekend for Latino Advocacy Day, as someone brought up, I think it was Claudia actually from this call, that folks that are coming in from out of state to Colorado wanting to seek this much needed care that they don't have access to in their home states might accidentally book an appointment with a fake clinic rather than a real clinic and spend that money, time, resources in booking a flight, booking a hotel, maybe renting a car, finding childcare for the children they already have, only to come here and realize that the appointment that they had made wasn't with a real abortion clinic, and they might not have the resources or even the time, because we know that abortion care is time sensitive, to access that care in time. So it's really important that we make sure that the deceptive practices that they make are no longer deceptive. We can go to the next slide.
I can talk about this, and I think Mar already talked about some of this, so I won't get too deep into it, but the other part that this bill is addressing is a treatment that over, I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think it's over like half of anti-abortion centers here in Colorado offer is what's called the abortion pill reversal. And the language, this is the language that they use. They call it the abortion pill reversal, which is a little tricky because I think it often makes people think that it's a pill that they receive when they go into these centers, which isn't the case, as Mar explained. It's a treatment that says that if you come after taking mifepristone to one of their centers, they can reverse the abortion by then prescribing progesterone. However, as Mar explains, this has been denounced by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. It's been denounced by the American Medical Association, and there are no actual ethical and peer-reviewed studies that say that this works. And it is unethical to provide a treatment that we don't know a ton about. There's no way to be able to give information about possible side effects or the actual efficacy or like effectiveness of this treatment. And in a lot of cases, abortion providers are already talking to their patients if someone does feel that they want to explore their options after receiving a medical abortion or after taking the first pill. This is already something an abortion provider can work with their patient to explore what other options there are for them if they are interested in reversing their abortion. But there is no evidence that progesterone does anything. The only peer-reviewed study that was done on this had to be halted due to safety concerns. And what the results showed from that study is that, yeah, there is no evidence that progesterone does anything, that it's more effective than just not taking the second abortion pill. This is purposely used. This is a very intentional treatment that is advertised to try to stigmatize people by saying that people regret their abortions, which we know isn't true. And all of the studies that have been done about how people feel after having an abortion, the number one feeling people report back is relief. And if there is stigma or if there is feelings of like lower feelings of relief or other feelings involved, the highest reason for that is stigma. So abortion pill reversal being one of those, just stigmatizing the idea that this is a choice that people are going to regret. So it's really important to us that this is something that we address in this bill, but also in the issue of anti-abortion centers generally. I think we can go to the next slide.
We've already covered this point, but just to reiterate, it's not necessarily about us wanting to get in the way of people seeking faith-based counseling. It's more about the fact that these faith-based groups of people are trying to pose as a medical authority to people that think that they're accessing medical-based care from medical professionals. And so we're trying to make this a deceptive practice. And if we go to the next slide, we can outline exactly what this bill does. So the first one is to prohibit the use of deceptive advertising by anti-abortion centers. And this covers the part where they're like, pregnant and confused or worried, like, please come into our clinics and explore all of your options, or considering an abortion, come in for a pre-abortion screening or a pre-abortion ultrasound, knowing that they do not offer abortions or even referrals for abortions. And I can pass it to Ariana for the second parts.
Yeah, the other part of the bill, or what the bill would do, is it would prohibit advertising for the abortion pill reversal treatment by naming it a deceptive trade practice. And the other part of this, it would make the prescribing, offering, and facilitation of that treatment unprofessional conduct for licensed, registered, or certified healthcare providers. So folks who are offering this in those centers, if they are licensed, registered, or certified, this would be considered unprofessional conduct for them, which again is really important because this is unethical to provide a treatment that hasn't been proven to work, that we haven't studied, and also that has been denounced by claims medical institutions. So this part feels super important to us in terms of protecting the dignity of the folks who are seeking care here in our state. Because what the first part would hopefully do is make it so that folks who are going to these centers know what these centers actually offer. What the second part would do is protect people who are going in there to making sure that they receive well-studied and ethical care.
And I realize we've taken a big portion of our time, and I want to hand it off to our next speaker.
I think what would be a good idea is to go to Shara right now from Interfaith Alliance, because I think the faith point of view is one of the issues that is so important in dealing with this bill.
Yes, thank you so much, Susan, and good evening, everyone. My name is Shara Smith. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the executive director of the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado. Very happy to be here with some of our partners from the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition, including Cobalt, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, ACLU, Calor, Progress Now Colorado, New Era Colorado, and the Interfaith Alliance. We are an interfaith public policy and advocacy organization with over 400 congregations in our statewide network, representing over 24 faith traditions. We're the only faith-based organization in our coalition. And this is significant for a couple of reasons. Number one, because anti-groups will often cite faith as the justification for fighting reproductive rights. But also, secondly, part of the reason why it's so significant that we are part of this coalition has to do with a realization I came to in my career several years ago, which is basically that it is difficult to transform society without addressing what people believe, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about each other, what we believe about society as a whole. And when you're talking about the realm of belief, you're oftentimes talking about faith. And so we are part of this coalition representing, as I mentioned, over 24 faith traditions to really send the message that the faith community is not monolithic when it comes to reproductive rights. As I'm sure many of you know, there are varying perspectives on reproductive rights. Unfortunately, the anti-groups will often sort of claim that if you are faithful, then you don't support repro rights. And we know that that is not true. There are folks who fight repro rights and they cite faith as the basis, but there are a lot of people who are with us, and they're with us because of their faith. So it's really important that we understand those distinctions. We are supporting the bill package that our Repro Coalition is pushing, and we're paying close attention to Senate Bill 190, specifically because of what was mentioned earlier about how these fake clinics, so to speak, are often run by faith-based groups. And so this has certainly gotten our attention as an organization that focuses on faith and freedom. But here's the deal. When people are seeking spiritual advice, they reach out to their church. They reach out to their synagogue. They reach out to their temple. They do not reach out to a crisis pregnancy center when they're seeking spiritual advice. They're clearly seeking medical advice and receiving something else in return. And so as a faith-based organization, we are paying very close attention to what's happening with these clinics because we feel that it is only appropriate for individuals seeking spiritual advice to be able to seek that from the appropriate source. And when they're seeking medical advice, to be able to seek that from the appropriate source. So this is something that matters a lot to Interfaith and to our statewide network. We feel very strongly that it is important to be careful about policy that allows for one faith tradition to dictate what others follow, because ultimately we believe that when policy is created based on one faith tradition, you inevitably are infringing on the rights of anyone who does not practice that faith. So we are linking arms with our coalition partners in supporting the bill package, but in particular supporting Senate Bill 190 to ensure that individuals seeking medical care can receive that appropriately, and those seeking spiritual advice can receive that appropriately. So just wanted to share that and just appreciate seeing all of you here tonight to talk about this really important legislation that we are leading as a coalition with some of our partner organizations sort of leading the charge and introducing the actual bills. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Can Claudia, Mar, and Ariana talk about the other two bills in a little bit more detail? 189 and 188?
Definitely, I can talk more about 189. So Bill 189, again, in our package is called Insurance Coverage for Reproductive Healthcare. The sponsors of this bill are Senator Dominic Moreno, Senator Lisa Carter, Representative Daphne Michael-Sanjanay, and Representative Lorena Garcia. So if I named one of your legislators, please send them an email, a letter, a call for support and appreciation for their work on this bill. They deserve and need all the support from constituents that they can get with our package. But for generally speaking, right, when we talk about this bill, we know that reproductive and sexual health care is an essential component of primary and preventative care. High deductibles and gaps in insurance coverage create barriers to patient access, even for those who are fortunate to live in Colorado, where essential health care is protected and legal. This bill closes several access gaps related to abortion care and sexually transmitted infections. Closing the access gaps between patients and healthcare is critically important at a time when states around us are banning abortion, targeting LGBTQ+ people, and attempting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Colorado has the opportunity to be a leader with this type of legislation. Sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion care, and for STIs, is an essential component of primary care. This bill improves access by requiring insurance to cover the full cost of that care. And we can all relate to an experience of having insurance not cover the full cost of care. For many people, a $600 medical bill can become a decision between getting the care that they need or paying rent, groceries, childcare. And we do not want our patients, our neighbors, our loved ones, our friends to be making that decision here in Colorado. So in summary, big picture, right? This bill is designed to close those access gaps for sexual and reproductive healthcare as it relates to insurance cost. And we can probably send over the fact sheets to Susan so that you can distribute the more in the weeds parts of these bills following this conversation.
And I think we can post that on our website so that those of you who are here tonight and people who are unable to join the Zoom can read them there. League of Women Voters, lwvdenver.org. I just got an email from Karen Middleton who said that the bill is up, and so they are busy. She's going to try to jump into the Zoom if she can. She has air enough, I guess, to be able to do that. Are there questions? Go ahead.
I mean, we're all in these meetings together and we're leading our bills, but I could probably do a quick overview of what their bill does if we have a little bit of time. Yeah.
Yes,
so
please do.
Senate Bill 188, Protecting Patients and Providers, essentially will shield patients, providers, and helpers of politically targeted healthcare services, including abortion and gender affirming care, from interstate criminal and civil threats. And so the reason why we have gender affirming care and abortion care together in this bill is because we know that it's the same legislators in the same states that are targeting these forms of care, and even model laws targeting these forms of care after each other. One example are, I'm sure you've heard of bounty hunter laws, that, for example, both of these have been introduced in Texas and for both types of care. If someone knows of someone accessing an abortion after 6 weeks, they can sue them, and the state can essentially give them a bounty for it. Like they can get up to $5,000 for getting these people criminally prosecuted. And then a few weeks later, one of these Karen's here, but I'll finish this story. The same format of the bill was made for trans folks and what they call like presenting in drag in public, especially in front of children. But the problem is that the people that interpret drag and the authorities can interpret someone just existing as a trans person as a form of drag. And so these bounty hunter laws can also be followed, sorry, it's been a long day, through state lines. And so we want to protect these patients and providers, but I'll pass it to Karen that I see that she's here to continue with.
Hi there. Sorry, I did not realize I was supposed to be here. I know there was a long thread. So Karen Middleton, I use she, her pronouns. I'm the president of Cobalt, and I'm sure you've probably heard the bills are up right now. So. And tell me what you've already talked about. Do you want me to talk about the patient and provider bill? Or have you already done that?
Yeah, we've gone over 189 and 190. And I was just explaining a general overview of 188, but if you want to talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. Yes. Good evening, everyone. So the patient, and we're loosely informally calling it the patient and provider bill, Senate Bill 188, is designed to really expand the protections for patients, providers, and assisters. So people who would assist someone who is helping folks access abortion care. So it will protect patients. So if they're coming here and they're getting care, we are putting into law everything that we can that would protect people within the borders of Colorado. It will protect providers. So really, the way I'm thinking about it is blocking what you are seeing right now is sort of the vigilante effect. So I don't know, the example that I've been using is you probably heard that the ex-husband in Texas sued his now ex-wife for having access to an abortion. He's not actually suing her, he's suing 3 people who assisted and provided information. So if you imagine those people were Coloradans, this bill would serve to block and make it impossible for Texas to sort of come after somebody here. It also shields providers around their licensure. So it's a pretty technical bill, and it's got 25 sections that actually deal with everything from if you are censured in another state for having been assisting with abortion care, it does not impact your license in the state of Colorado. And it also takes a lot of the protections that Governor Polis put into the executive order last summer and puts them into law. I was there for some of the floor debate today, and one of the examples that came up on the floor, and there are a number of people here who were there longer than me, so chime in if something else changed. But one of the ways that we saw local government attempting to restrict abortion access was in the city of Pueblo. So there's a new abortion clinic there, the Care Clinic. And there was an effort to implement something from the Comstock law, which dates to the late 1800s. Yay, team, we need to go that far back to find something nefarious to try to block abortion access that would have limited the ability for the clinic to receive supplies and materials through the US mail. So lovely. So the city we were able to work and advocate, and a number of the partner organizations here actually were down organizing the city council members in Pueblo and educating them. But our bill has a section that's really designed to make sure that there is state oversight if someone is trying to violate this section of the law once it's implemented. So the idea would be that yes, you have local control over lots of things, but if you're going to try to restrict access to abortion, that we consider that a state purview, and that it would allow the Attorney General's office to push back. So that's an area that still, I think there's been some tweaking on amendments on the floor, but the principle of it is to really protect those who are in Colorado's borders from anyone coming in. And I don't know how much, I didn't know some of this, but there have been existing interstate compacts that, for example, there were four states in this compact that would allow a police officer to come across the border and grab someone who's got charges in another state. So if that state is now Wyoming, and Wyoming just banned abortion sort of draconian laws over the weekend. We don't want Wyoming police just driving in and grabbing someone in Colorado. So that's the level of protection that we're talking about. And I think that's why, you know, this whole package is important, but this particular bill, we're excited to be moving forward, and we're excited to have people's support. And I'm happy to answer questions, and also happy to have any of my partners fill me in if anything got drastically changed in the last 2 hours.
Thank you so much for coming, Karen. Please get some liquid in you. We can have you post questions in chat at this point, or if you'd like to raise your hand. Pearl Ann, is that okay with you?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
For people that ask questions who are here? Do we have anybody wanting to ask any questions of these presenters?
Oh, it looks
Right,
like there's an
Kate.
announcement in the
bill,
chat.
yeah, the bill that I was describing did pass on second reading. And I don't know, again, let me just say one more footnote while people think of their questions or get the mechanical hands raised. It always takes me a while. I will tell you that going back a couple of years, I remember when the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition was pulled into a room, and we had a lot of bill ideas, and we were basically told by the chair of one of the committees, one of our allies, that there was really room for us to run one bill. So the idea that we have a package of 3, and then we're also working with a sister reproductive justice organization that is running a 4th bill that was up today that's around decriminalizing, that's probably, so women who are pregnant or experiencing childbirth and are in the criminal justice system are getting some protections and diversions so that they're allowed to, in a more just way, really pregnant, parent, birth, and be with their new babies. And some of the testimony around that was truly heartbreaking. And it is really such the level of disrespect that women experience in the criminal justice system all the time, and then layered on someone who's giving birth, is really just traumatic. And so we're grateful that you're asking lots of questions. And I just also want to name that, you know, I will have been leading this organization for a decade. This is the strongest year we've had in terms of legislators actually saying, yes, we want to work and support you on these bills. Yes, 3 bills, 4 bills is reasonable, and we're actually seriously moving them. Thank you for Ariana for sharing that. With the Elephant Circle and Soul to Soul Sisters are leading on that bill, and they've brought a really terrific presentation together. So I just wanted to add that footnote, and then I saw some hands raised, and I'm happy to defer to my team.
So if you have your hands up, feel free to unmute and ask the question.
I think Talia had your hand raised. Maybe.
No, I was just clapping.
Okay.
I had
like
a follow on to that, Karen. What was the atmosphere like today while you were there? Well, all of you were there, and 2 of you are still there. For all of you, what has the atmosphere been like?
So I wanted to add that today was the lobby day for the antis. And so they showed up with baby blue and baby pink clothing, like in uniform, in support of them, like our package not passing. So it's been a very tense day. I've had to mute a couple of times because they were yelling. But I think we have the legislature on our side, and I have big hope that we're gonna make it.
Oh, that's great.
One of the things I want to mention, I think that Sharon Davis is unable to join us, but one of the things that's happening at the state level at the League of Women Voters of Colorado is training sessions for people to meet with groups to destigmatize abortion. And so I've heard that you've been doing that with younger people, but I think it's really important. And the word abortion is being used over and over and over again today. And I want to tell you how different that is from years ago when that word abortion was not used. Abortion is a medical term. And people who have had miscarriages, like I've had miscarriages, and those are called spontaneous abortions. That's the medical language for what happens when you have a miscarriage. And Sharon said that one of the things they found that they really needed to do when she worked in Ireland was to really help people understand that the word abortion is not a negative or bad word or something that goes against religious beliefs, but is actually a term that's used around a medical procedure or a medical event. So that's one of the things that they're going to be doing at the state level for League of Women Voters of Colorado. And that kind of ties in, I think, Shara, with what you were talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm really glad to hear that that work is being approached. I mentioned earlier just how certain groups have been able to seize the narrative. And it's really important, particularly for faith-based groups to seize it back and for people to speak up about the conviction they have both in their faith and for abortion rights, because you never know who might be in earshot and just needing to hear that support so that they can address the stigma that they might be facing in their own situations.
So there is
Yeah.
a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to add a quick, just a quick thought about that, which has been really interesting and working with young people. And sorry, my camera's off because the Wi-Fi isn't the best here. But something that's been really interesting working with young people and working to make sure that they, with their peers and their friends, are destigmatizing the word abortion, is that it often comes to the dinner table, those conversations. And I found this with my own mother, who had never really talked about having an abortion until I worked on abortion and started talking about it, the work that I was doing with her, that she felt comfortable talking about it. And this has been true for so many young people that we've worked with who have then talked about it because they feel comfortable doing so, and then bring it to the dinner table or bring it to their parents' house and start talking about this and how much more comfortable it feels for them and how it just passes on some of that healing and destigmatizing work. And so, I think it's really important to have those conversations even with your community because, Shara, I think you said this so well, that I think there's always someone that's just waiting to feel like they have permission to talk about it, or especially if it's their own story.
We had a question in chat. Are there other states instituting similar laws to the ones Colorado is proposing? It's a question on, are we at the forefront or?
I can speak on 190. So we're modeling our bill with a Connecticut bill that was successfully passed in protecting people from anti-abortion clinics and their deceptive practices. However, we are the first state to be going after the abortion pill reversal. And so our legislation will be model legislation on that part of the bill. But Connecticut has successfully been able to regulate anti-abortion centers through the Consumer Protection Act.
I have somebody saying, I am here, my internet is acting up. Who
Oh yeah,
is?
it's Karen Middleton. She
Oh,
wrote in,
okay.
I think she was responding to you, Stuff.
I'm here. I just
Okay, good.
can't. I'm going off. I'm going off camera so that we don't lose the connection. And just to follow on with what Mara was saying with the bill on protecting patients and providers, my understanding is that it will be one of the stronger bills in the country if it passes as presented.
That's great. You had also said, Karen, that your coalition's working on a large-scale grant to destigmatize abortion. So that was as a follow-up to Sue's comments about the League of Women Voters Colorado. And Kay Shaw suggested a book. It's in the chat. Other questions? Conversations?
I just wanted to share one more thing on the faith piece. So it's important, I think, for folks to understand that when we're talking about faith and abortion and reproductive rights, there are some faith traditions that are very much against it and will express that. Other faith traditions are in support of it right from the beginning, from inception. Some other faith traditions doctrine might dictate that once you reach a certain point, then, at that point, then maybe it's not considered acceptable. And then other faith traditions might say, well, it's not about that point. We believe this instead. And so my point is this, there's a variety of belief out there. There's a variety of doctrine. So whose faith do you follow when you are addressing your own reproductive needs? Should it be someone's faith down the street or your own? And so this, again, is why Interfaith is in this space, because we believe, as was discussed yesterday at the Capitol when we had our reproductive lobby day, that these are sacred choices, right? These are sacred choices, and everyone needs the space to make that sacred choice based on their own faith tradition, if they have one. And they shouldn't be forced to make that sacred decision based on the random faith from someone else. So it's really important for folks to remember that. And the reason why this is a religious freedom issue for Interfaith is because we believe individuals should be allowed to make that sacred decision based on their own faith tradition and not have someone else's faith tradition dictate what they are supposed to do in that moment. So I just wanted to add that for some additional context, since we were talking about, dialogue around this issue and making sure folks feel comfortable speaking up. That's an important point to remember as you're having these conversations with friends, with family, etc.
Thank you. Other questions? One of the questions I have is they're kind of looking toward the future, and we hope all three of these bills pass. But is there also thought about supporting a constitutional amendment here in Colorado, perhaps in 2024 or maybe later, to codify the access to abortion here in Colorado?
Yes, so and please forgive me because I've been with Calor for 5 years, but I took a bit of a hiatus as I was graduating college. But I know that in 2024, Calor does plan to put forth a ballot measure to codify abortion into the Constitution. Rhea was I don't want to call it a placeholder because it did a very important job, but we want to make sure that it's in the Constitution that abortion is protected in the state.
I was at a Planned Parenthood meeting by Zoom, I think last week. And one of the things League of Women Voters and others to let you know about things that we can do in the future is that will require that we have petitions signed in every area of the state. And we have to get enough legitimate signatures on petitions. And we also need to have notaries who can notarize those petitions. So in the future, especially if you're listening from various parts of Colorado, or you have family members or friends in other parts of Colorado, that will be something that we can actively do to help put that constitutional amendment up for a vote.
We have another question asking for more information about gender affirming parts of these bills.
I know that Karen can probably speak to the more technical part of the bill, but I wanted to share one of the stories that was shared during the hearing last Wednesday for these bills, specifically on 188. It was a story of a parent. It was the parent testifying about how they were supporting their child and, getting them through the age appropriate gender affirming care. And at that point, honestly, it had just been supporting their decision to live their life as they are. They'd been persecuted by the state and by child protective services, claiming that them supporting their child was child abuse. And they had to move to Colorado to make sure that they would not be separated. And part of what this bill might do in that example would be to make sure that Texas couldn't come after them now that they are Colorado citizens and separate them and their families. Another important point that I'm just personally keeping track of on a personal level is that there are currently 444 anti-LGBT laws that have been passed in 2023 alone. And 7 have been passed and signed by the governor of the respective states. A lot of these are either bounty hunter laws or what they call drag bans. And as I kind of touched on a little bit before, is that although drag bans might sound like only a ban on what drag performers know is drag, although that in its own should not be banned because it's a cultural practice, is that trans people existing could be perceived as drag by law enforcement and could put people in jail for just existing as a trans person. And part of that care is gender affirming care and making sure that people aren't put in jail for that if they access that care in Colorado. But again, I can pass it to someone else. I just wanted to share the more anecdotal pieces of that bill.
I think another thing on context, why we're focusing on abortion care and gender affirming care includes the fact that these same groups that are now targeting our trans community members are the same bad actors who have put forward efforts in the anti-abortion movement space. And so these are the same folks, the same tactics, the same villainization efforts. And that's why it's so important for us to be standing shoulder to shoulder with our friends and allies and partners in the LGBTQ plus space, because this work goes hand in hand, and there is a collective effort from the same people who are seeking to limit, restrict, ban abortion and sexual and reproductive health care, who are again looking to limit, restrict, and ban trans members and healthcare across the country as well. This is a united effort, and we need to be really, really united in that voice.
Other questions? Other comments?
I don't know if Karen was able to come back. She came in and out, I think, but she said that our coalition is planning to make 2 policy shifts, overturning the state funding ban on abortion and affirming RHEA in the Constitution. We have a campaign director hired, and we were moving on it. So in case you didn't read that in chat or when she wasn't able to speak.
Well, I want to thank.
I had one quick question. When do we need to start gathering signatures for that constitutional amendment for the?
Ariana, Mark, and one of you.
We'll be
Respond to
starting
that.
that work soon, definitely after this legislative session is over and this package is passed. I think all of our capacity is on that right now, but as soon as we start that work, we'll make sure to loop y'all in. But we know that we're planning accordingly, and we will have enough time to collect all of those signatures.
Yeah, and I was gonna just uplift the what Karen said is that we hired a campaign director with the coalition to kind of assist through that planning process. And so a lot of that will start to get set up in terms of what those plans are for the future. So yeah, stay tuned.
We'll share more information soon. Some of us are actually actively working on it now, and we're not waiting, but we're giving grace to everyone who's down at the Capitol. And we should have ballot title language by early fall, and we will be working on collecting signatures, and we'll definitely talk about how we can involve organizations like yours in signing on and volunteering.
I saw that Jeanette had her hand up. Unmute yourself, Jeanette.
Karen just said it all by getting a title ballot and by working through the Secretary of State's office. And I would suggest a two-pronged effort. One is working through the Secretary of State's office, but going to groups like ours and saying, we'll be needing people to help work on getting signatures, so that you work on it from two ends.
Absolutely. And we already have regional organizers across our organizations identifying potential volunteers, and we would love to include all of you in that. And for sure, we're happy to follow up.
Great. Any other questions? Any other comments? I want to let you know and remind you about our election here, certainly in Denver. April 4th, very important. We have a lot of material on our website, legalwomenvotersofdenver.org, lwvdenver.org. We also have our pro and con brochures that we produce at every election about the ballot issues. So that's on our website. I also want to let you know that our next briefing will be on Tuesday, April 18th, same time, also by Zoom. And this is going to be dealing with Denver's basic income project, which is a project to try to address homelessness in a different way that's been used in different countries and in other states, to give direct payments to individuals and families who are in homeless shelters or who are in unstable housing, to help them move toward stable housing. It's a program that's being organized in coordination with DU's Center on Housing and Homelessness. So there will be research coming out of this. And in May, for league members who are here, we have in Denver our annual meeting, and the specific date of that will be coming up soon, we hope. I can't thank enough the presenters who came tonight and took out time from what is really important that you are doing down at the legislature. We really appreciate all the work that you do, not just this time of year, but all the time. Please don't hesitate to contact the League of Women Voters of Denver and League of Women Voters of Colorado to add us to your coalition, to add us to your efforts as you proceed in doing this very important work. Thank you again, everyone. And unless there are other comments, I'll say that we will probably close the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Karen. Good night.